Hey guys, welcome in that video which shows you the new layout tool which has been introduced into Golem 7. If you've been using Golem 6 and the layout tools from this version before, I'd recommend watching the video which helps you making the transition between 6 and 7 regarding the layout tools. If you haven't been using Golem for a while or you're brand new, you're in the right place. So right now I'm running Golem 7 and the whole goal of the layout tool is to help you retaking and reshaping your crowd, modifying your crowd, which has been exported to make it closer to the vision of the director of the shot. So let's say you make a simulation. Most of the time you go to dailies and you get some retakes, such as you would like those characters here to be more on the right, you would like to have more character into the background, maybe you would like to reanimate this one character here, maybe delete those guys there, maybe change the assets and the shaders from those ones. So all those different retakes can be achieved with the layout tools. So there are two ways to reach the step I'm at right now. So either you make it the classic way, so you populate your scene by creating an entity type, then making your population tool and assigning some behaviors. So this is what I've been doing here. I'm having a simulation and that simulation has been exported. As soon as it is exported, I'm having a cache proxy node into my scene which holds all the parameters about where is that cache being exported. So that's one way, making your simulation. Or you can use the Golemizator to help you either convert keyframe animation or mocap animation directly as a simulation cache without having to use the behaviors, without having to make a character file, just by asking your animators to make vignettes and exporting those vignettes as simulation caches. So if you're not familiar with that tool, I recommend watching the video tutorials about the Golemizator. So that's another way to reach that step. So regarding layout, there's something I really want to insist on, is that everything I'm gonna do next, when I'm gonna re-layout my crowds, is gonna be non-destructible. So all the layers I'm gonna be applying here, they're just apply on top of the simulation cache. So you got the simulation cache, and on top you got all the layers being applied. It's like Photoshop style stuff, which means when you add some layers into Photoshop, you're not distracting the underlying image, you're just adding some layers on top. So that's exactly the same here, which means you can have multiple artists using the same simulation cache as a start point and just applying different layers and shape that cache in different ways, like in possibly dozens or hundreds of ways. So we can see that more and more amongst the customers. We got one master simulation cache which is made, and on top of that we got multiple artists, which makes hundreds of variations of that same scene. So let's get started with the layout tool. So you can find the layout tool here. It's a working character, and next it has some layers on it, and when you open it, it looks like this. So you got three different panels. One on the left is the layout node library. So that node library is nodes you can drag and drop into the canvas here to apply your deformation on your characters. Then you got the middle part here, which is the canvas. So every time you're having a simulation cache proxy in your scene, you'll have a new tab into that layout editor. So right now I'm going to edit the crowds which are within that node here. And on the right part, you got the attribute editor. So every time you're going to drag and drop a node here, you'll be able to edit its attribute from that panel here. At the bottom, you can see what's the cache usage, so how much memory you're using right now with the cache. And on the top, you can search for entity IDs or node names. So if you're making like a really heavy graph, you want to make sure that you can find easily some of the nodes by selecting them by entity IDs or node names. So that's what it's made for. So when you're within the layout tool, there are two important things you need to remember. Is like there are like two types of nodes. One is selector nodes. So I'm gonna drag and drop a selector. The selector can be found here. So that's that box which looks like a selection box. And everything which starts from that node here, so the merge node until the end node here, is the other type of node I would like to introduce. It's a transformation node. So I'm going to grab a translate node and bring it here. For complexity reasons, I'm just going to remove that blue color to that node. I'll introduce what does that blue means, but so we can really focus on selector versus translates. So selector nodes are gray, you can see, and they allow you to select entities you'll be applying operations on. Then you get operation nodes, transformation nodes, and those transformation nodes are like gray-blue, something like this, and they are applying transformation on selections. Enters the duplicate, for example, or the snap to, for example, and you can see those guys are neither like gray-blue, they neither gray completely, but they're like kind of both, they're blue and gray. So those nodes are actually a combination of a selector node and a translate node. So every time you use a duplicate, please remember that you are changing the current selection you're applying deformations on. But I'll explain that a bit later. So let me put those back here and maybe speak about that selector node. So that selector node has one attribute, which is entities, and it specifies which entities are going to be influenced by the transformation which will follow and be connected to that selector node. By default, when you create a selector node, it takes into account your viewport selection. So my viewport selection here was empty, but if I jump into my viewport, I press F9 to go into component mode, and I select a bunch of entities. The next time I'm going to create a selector node, you can see here it's filled with the IDs of the currently selected entities. If you're unselecting the node and reselecting the node and go into the viewport here, put the focus on that node, you'll be able to see which nodes get selected. If you forgot about filling a node, you can still use the set, add, or remove, or clear buttons here. So let's say you create the selector node, but it's empty. You can still grab a selection here and either use the set or the add button to add this to the current selection. So the set will replace what was in the field. The add will only add the entities which were not into the field. And the remove will remove the current selection from the field. And the clear obviously will just remove everything. Okay, so that's my selector node. Then you got the transformation node. And to apply a transformation to a selector, you need to connect those two together. So I'm having my selection here, I'm having my translation here. Let's remove that blue color and once again. And to apply a transformation, I just have to press middle click between my two nodes. It will drag a link between those two. And into my translate node, I can apply a deformation. So I can say I would like to translate my entities of 10 units on the x-axis. So if I press enter, you can see nothing's going on. And this is where we're going to introduce the root node. So you may have noticed I've been playing with that blue color from the beginning. That's the root node. So it means which parts of the graph get evaluated right now into the viewport. And there is only one root node in a whole graph. Changing the root node allows you to debug your scene, maybe do some experiments on one side, maybe check what's going on into one layer, change the focus. So to set a node as a root node, you can either right click on it and set as root. And as soon as you set it as root, you can see now it's getting executed. So you can see now that my selection has been translated of 10 units. Or you can use the V key, V for view. So you can change V here or V there, and you can see it's applying this to your entities. And the really nice thing about that approaches about selector and translate is that you can change your selectors and maybe improve or change or edit it, and everything gets propagated properly. So let's say I want to maybe change all my entities and move them of 10 units. What I can do is I can just clear that field here, put a star instead. So the star will stand for everybody. It's a white card for everybody. And now you can see that all my entities get assigned with that translate node. So it's a really nice thing. Also, another nice thing is that, let's say instead of being a star, I want to select maybe just a bunch of characters here, and I want to set this. So now just my bunch of characters are getting translated. You can also have multiple inputs into a transformation node. So you can select also those guys there, for example, create a selector out of it. So that's my selector. And I can drag and drop a link between my selector and my translate. And you can see now that my translate node concerns that group of people here from that selector and that group of people there from that selector. One other feature as well is whenever you click on a node, you can see within the viewport which entity gets influenced by that node. And that's really convenient. And it works into the other way as well. If you select an entity or a bunch of entities within your graph, you'll also be able to see which branch of the graph they get evaluated by that orange color, which is here. So, okay, let's keep working with this. Maybe I remove that, and I just had maybe a star here. So everybody, oops, that's the name of my node. So let's bring it back as selector. Okay, and let's maybe change my selection and say, I want to translate everybody of 10 units. While I'm not adding another selector to the graph here in between, whatever I'll do next will still be applied to the latest selector which is into the graph. So if I'm applying a new operation here, let's say I don't want to have sweatshirts anymore. So I can see all my characters here, they're having that red sweatshirt, and the director changed its mind, it doesn't want sweatshirts anymore. Let's say I want to change this, I can bring maybe add and remove mesh assets, and I can connect it to my translate. By the way, you can see as soon as I connect a new node to a root node, that root node gets propagated to that new node that has been connected. If you want to change back, you can still press the V key, don't forget about it. So what I would like to do here is to remove the sweatshirt and add a t-shirt instead. So within the add remove mesh asset, I can say I want to remove something, and what I would like to remove is the sweatshirt, which is here, torso sweatshirt. And now you can see my character doesn't have a sweatshirt anymore, so I want to bring a t-shirt instead. So I'm gonna bring like torso t-shirt. Oh, that's hair. No, that's the sweatshirt. Okay, let's increase the panel here and maybe do something like this. Okay, t-shirt, and I would like also to bring the arms, because right now I just have a t-shirt. So let's bring the biceps. Okay, and you can see that everything, so all the sweatshirt has been removed from all the entities here. So as soon as I'm adding more and more layers, they get applied onto the same selection, which is the closest selection we can find into the graph. So if, let's say you want to change your mind, you only want to change the add remove mesh assets onto a bunch of characters. Maybe I can go back into this step here by pressing V, see who's wearing a sweatshirt, maybe here in the foreground, and I would like to only select those guys there. So I can bring those guys, maybe those 3 guys there, or 4 guys there. So what I can do is take a selector node, so that's my new selection, and if I put my selector node there, so here, if I put my selector node here, now I'm changing the previous selection from the add remove mesh assets, and now you can see only the characters which are within that selector gets influence. So remember that every layer operation you'll be applying is applied on the latest selector you can find into the graph, and it can be maybe 10 nodes behind, or it can be just right behind. It's really up to you here. And if I remove that, then I've got all my characters which gets applied. If I just applied it, it's only the characters which are in the top. So let's say I would like to maybe duplicate everybody now, and I would like to have twice more characters. What I can do is add, maybe starting by adding a new selector and connect it to my add remove mesh asset, so it becomes the root. I want to select everybody. Okay. And I want to use the duplicate node. So the duplicate node doesn't have any attribute here, but as I said earlier, it's both a selector and a translation operation. So as it's a selector, it means that whatever I'm going to apply next is not going to be applied on this one here, but it's going to be applied on the duplication of those guys there. So just as an example here, let's say I'm applying a translate node and connect it here. If I press and I provide a -10 deformation, now you can see that all my duplicated entities get translated of -10 units. So that's the whole core of it. It's to understand the difference between the selectors and how they relate to operations. Maybe I can play with a couple of more layers. Let's say on my duplicated entities, I want to apply a time offset because they're playing exactly the same frames here than my current crowd. I can just connect a frame offset here and provide a minimum offset of 10 frames and maybe a maximum offset of 20 frames here. And it's really subtle, but let's bring back that node here. So that was before, that's after. So you can see they're changing their postures. So we're just applying a random offset between 10 and 20 frames here. So I can also bring you a merge node. So let's say you want to kill a couple of characters. One way I really like to do this is bring a kill node, which is here, and put a branch somewhere in my graph. And whenever the director comes and say I would like to kill that guy here, that guy there, that guy there, what I'm going to do is just connect that to the kill node. So let's say I'm having maybe a first bunch of selection here, or maybe those guys there. Let's remove those guys, so that's going to be more obvious. What I'm doing is I just bring a selector node here and connect that to the kill. And obviously, if I want this to be active, well, I need to set it as root, and now my characters have disappeared and they're not into that viewport anymore. But my duplicated, my translation, my frame offset are not getting applied neither. So one way to solve this either is to connect the frame offset to my new selector and make just a continuous graph. And now you can see my characters have disappeared from the beginning and I'm getting everything. Or one other way is to make different branches and just merge them. So you can merge them by using the merge node, which is here. So that's just a dummy node which allows you to take multiple parts of the graph, such as this one here and that one there, and to merge them together. It's exactly the same thing as sequencing your layers, but that's just allowing you to make a different representation of that. Notice that if you want, you can also group and use groups there, and you can just hide the complexity of a branch into a group. So you can double click on a group, and it allows you to jump into that group, which is empty right now. And you can use the breadcrumbs here to go up and down, or you can double click or use control double click to alt double click. Okay, it's supposed to work. So control double click is supposed to bring you up, or you can use the breadcrumbs. Speaking about shortcuts, I may have used a couple of shortcuts, but I haven't really specified them. So let's say you're having current selection into your graph here, and you want to focus on it. You can use the F key to focus onto your selection there. So let's say you select that node here. You can use the F key to focus on it. That's exactly the same features than this one here. You can use the A key to frame all. So the frame all is going to be that one there. And that button here allows you to bring everything to scale 1. Also, you may have seen me changing and removing some selectors from the flow. So let's say you want to remove that selector from the flow. You can press the Alt key and drag the nodes out. And if you want to bring it back, you just have to make it upon the link. So you can see that the link now becomes bold. And when you release, when it's bold, it becomes automatically connected to what you had before. So whenever you're happy with the result of this, you just have to save, and everything here will be saved into a layout file, and that layout file once again is just going to be layers you're going to be applied onto your crowds. And once it's saved, you'll be able to render this. So I can just jump into my render scene, check that everything is correct using the render node, check that I'm having a light within my scene, and now I can press render and see what's going on. So all the layers operation will be applied on top of the simulation cache, and you'll get exactly the same result from what you had within the viewport. So here we go. You can see here we don't have the characters anymore. The characters, I'm not wearing a sweatshirt. I'm having twice more characters. They're slightly shift in time. It's not really obvious, but there are. And just to make my mind, well, just to help you making your mind about the non-destructive aspect of the layout tool is, let's say the simulation has changed. Maybe the pitch has changed and you want to have characters being animated as soon as they get into that red plane here. So that's something I already take into account into my behavior. So I'm having that behavior here, which was inactive. Let's say now it has changed. I can go back into simulation and run back my sim. So let's bring back my population tools. So now I'm going to export the simulation, and you'll see that as soon as my characters get into the plane, they just raise their arms. So that's a new behavior. And you'll see that once that simulation will be exported, all the layout modification I've been applying, which is duplicating my characters and everything, which gets replicated the same way without the layout tools. So here you can see I'm having twice more characters now, and my twice more characters here, they are playing the same behavior that what I've been exported previously. So once again, completely non-destructive. Everything you're gonna apply is apply on top of the simulation cache. One last thing I haven't really said, but it's tiny stuff, is at any time you can disable a node. Let's say you're not really happy with that, you can just disable it. You can see now it's disabled, it's grayed out, and as soon as you disable it, it doesn't get applied anymore. So you don't have to unlink necessary a layer from the graph to disable it. You can just disable or enable to either, like here, duplicate or doesn't change your simulation cache. So I hope it makes sense. We'll make more videos which covers how you can reanimate your characters by using that rig node and that posture node. We also make videos about how to keyframe attribute. That's one of the really nice thing about the new tool, is that a lot of attributes like the translation can be keyframed. So we show you how you can animate those in a really nice and proper way. And hopefully see you into the next video.